Well, we hope. Good.
Yep.
We'll have a look at this Mishnah, Daf Zayin Amud Aleph, as we move in there. Maybe we'll see how we finish the end here. We'll go for the L'chaim next week if we finish the Perek. All be well. Let's see how we go. Quick reminder of the Mishnah on Daf Zayin Amud Aleph. Misha Nigma Dino, remember? Someone who Nigma Dino, which means the court case came to an end, conclusion, Nigma from Gomar, and then ran off, managed to escape without being noticed and ran off. Borlifnei Oso Bezdin. He comes back, he's caught, back in handcuffs, and there he is. He's back at the same Bezdin. Ein Soser Nestino. Soser means to break. Listar, don't break that din. In other words, the original verdict stands. As Rashi says, you don't go back to start delving into it once again. You've already got a conclusion. So we stick with that. But then in the Mishnah says, Kol Malkum Sheyamdu Shnaim, if there are two people, V'yomru, and they will say, Mi Eden Odem Milish Ploni Shenik Madina Bevezdin Ploni, that there was a verdict given elsewhere. Again, Bish Ploni Shenik Madina Bevezdin Ploni, and then Ploni and Ploni. A lot of these Plonis, you see, they're all the unnamed people. Ploni and Ploni were the Adim. In other words, the second part of the Mishnah is telling us that if this chap runs off, but there are two people who come forward, they capture him, and then they say, we were there, and Shenigma Dino, we were there when the court case came to its verdict, and we know what it was, and yes, he was Chayav Misa, then he can be killed by their testimony. They're now not testifying about the event, they're testifying about the court case coming to a verdict, and that's enough. Okay, and then we got a few other halachas here in this Mishnah. The next one, this is the last Mishnah of this Perek. Sanhedrin no heges be'eretz u'b'chutz la'oretz. You can have, this is important, you can have a bezdin sitting both in Eretz Yisrael and in chutz la'oretz, even judging capital offences. We'll more about that in a moment. So that's an additional point there. A hand up from Mervyn.
Yeah, I was just going to say, can you hear me? You can hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
It's about the double jeopardy, isn't it? When you said you can't try him twice. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I mean, the double jeopardy, there was an English law, wasn't there? I don't know if there's any lawyers here. Michael Fluss, my doctor. There's no, once somebody's been, if they've been discharged, I mean, you can't try them again, I think. Even if you ever...
This is the one. What about the other? This is the other way round.
Yeah,
where he hasn't been discharged. They've actually come to a conclusion he is actually chayav, and then hops it, legs it.
Yeah, but yes, that's right. Then he can't be tried again in another court. You mean? That's what this?
No. It's already been decided. This person, he was guilty.
Yeah, I understand that. And then
what? So what we're saying is. No, notice the words of the Mishnah. Uvo lifnei oso bezdin. He's captured, brought back to the same bezdin. Ein soser nesira. That's going to be very important. Now, I don't know, Michael may be able to tell us here. What is the rule about if there is a court case and he's found guilty and runs?
What in this country now?
Yeah.
I think he's guilty of absconding in addition to the principal to the matter for which he tried in the first place. So I think that's double trouble for him, I imagine.
It would be double trouble, right? Okay. Here we're saying, "Well, if there's a bit ain't so sinner again, we do not acquit him, or we don't even look into it once again." Yeah. That's the first part. We'll have to look at that in more detail. And I think we don't need to look at the next bit yet. because although we're talking about Sanhedrin Noagim Be'eretz Yisrael, and then there's the final part of this Mishnah. Let's go.
Malcolm.
Malcolm, yes, go on. Yes, Malcolm.
Yes, sorry, just on that thing, the two witnesses business, that it doesn't say so, but are we to understand? So one case, they come back, the absconder meets his original bet din.
Yes.
And then the second case, he doesn't meet his original bet din, but
yes.
he does meet two witnesses who will then testify against him.
Yes.
So they stand for the bet din. They have as much authority. I mean, their word is
right. Yeah, rather than testifying about the event of, let's say in our case, a murder, they're saying, no, we didn't see that, but what we did, we were sitting.
We were at the court, yes,
in the court when there was a verdict. And
okay, so there is a sort of a sense in which there is although you're not allowed to retry it, that particular interaction of the two witnesses is a type of, they have to say it to somebody, presumably.
Yes, but they're not.
So they have to say it to.
They will come to another Bezdin elsewhere. He gets caught, brought to the Bezdin, coming in another country. Gets caught, brought from front of a Bezdin, and two people come forward and say, we were there in the Bezdin where he was tried and he was found guilty, and that will be enough. But there's going to be more about this in a moment.
Okay.
So hold on. Then we've got the mission that says, second part, the Sanhedrin Noagim Be'eretz Oretz U'B'chutz La'Oretz. And this is a court, and it's you need 23 to be able to sit. There's a whole Mishnah and various Mishnais in Sanhedrin, but they can sit both in Eretz Yisrael and in Chutz La'Oretz. That's second part of the Mishnah. And the third part of the Mishnah is the following: Sanhedrin Hahu Reges.
Oh, I've lost.
Lost it? Hello? Somebody said something? Okay. Sanhedrin Hahu Reges Echod Bo Shavua. If a court is not only coming to a verdict, carrying out the death penalty, Echod Bo Shavua doesn't mean once a week. Shavua here means 7, but it's called a 7 year. If it's once in 7 years, Nikres Chovlonis. If you say from the normally Chabola means destroying, destructive, Bezdin, because you should be able to look into it. We'll see. There's going to be more about this in the Gemara. That is considered quite a cruel Bezdin. Now, of course, if they've looked into it and the person's Chayiv Misa, then of course they've got to carry it out. But normally, they'd be searching high and low to be able to come up with a reason why they shouldn't have to carry out that death penalty. And what they're saying there, if it was carried out once in 7 years, that is I would say, destructive, if you like, Nikres Chovlonis. Look at Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, Echod l'shivim shona, once in 70 years. What does that mean? Once in 70 years, it's chavlonis, or once in 70 years is acceptable? The Gemara will deal with that. But then we got a final view here. So we've got the Tanakh who says once in 7 years, chavlonis. Michael is putting his hand up.
Yeah. Isn't there something about, wasn't there something about Shimon ben Shetach?
Yes.
Was it 80 witches or something?
Absolutely. Yes, very good indeed. More on that subject, yes. So what we see from there is, if it's got to be carried out, it's got to be carried out. But nevertheless, in general, I mean, I suppose you'd say, but there's more on this in a minute. We've got a machlokas here. You see, the Tanakh says once in 7 years. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says once in 70 years. But we don't know whether he means that's not good or that's acceptable. And then we've got Rab Tarfon v'Rabbi Akiva Omrim. Ilu hoyinu b'Sanhedrin. had we been part of the Sanhedrin, lo nerag odom me'olam, nobody would ever be killed, because we'd be looking into it and find out that tripping up the Eidim to ensure that the actual, I say the person would not be killed. Now the problem there, just let's finish the mission and we'll come back to Rashi. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel oimer, afhein marbim shofchei domim b'Yisrael. How can they say that they would never kill? What's afhein? We've seen this term elsewhere in the Gemara. Afhein hoy be'osanes. We'll come to that in a second. Afhein marbim shofchim domim b'Yisrael. They are increasing the amount of murder, because if there's this statement coming out, the Rabbi Taf and Rabbi Akiva said, had we been in the Beis Din, we would always have found, and the Gemara will deal with that, the type of questions they'd be asking. But Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says that you've got, it's not just on the statute books, it must be carried out, and there's bound to be a case where it is needed, and therefore it should be carried out. And afhein hoya marbim shofchim domim Yisrael, they're increasing the amount of murders that would take place if you know that the Beis Din is going to acquit you. Now, a couple of points here. It'd be just on technical points on the wording in the Mishnah before we try to understand it. What does this Rabbi Taf and Rabbi Akiva say? Had we been in the Beis Din? Let's have a look at Rashi. What do you mean, had we been in the Beis Din? Have a look, please, at the Mishnah. So again, we spoke about the first part, and he runs up. Remember, part one is where someone runs off, escapes, and then is brought in front of Oso Beis Din. Second line down, Shen Nischayev Bo, the Beis Din where he was found guilty. Ein Soisum, we saw that. Lachso v'litein, v'liso v'litein. This is what it means, giving and taking. It means the dayonim discussing and arguing about the case. Ula yizker. So you don't go back and scrap whatever you've said and start again, because you've come back to the same Beis Din. They've made a decision. Don't need to go and retry this fellow. Then you've got this Rashi. Ilu hoyinu. What's this? Had we been in the Beis Din? B'yomim, in the days, she Sanhedrin donu dinei nefoshes. Can I please call on you, Peter? I think it was the third attachment, which is have you got an attachment for us? Let's have a look here at the Gemara. Thank you. On its way. Looking good. Oh, that's good. No, that's Muckus. That's just, not.
1 second. It's.
Oh, it's going to be underneath.
Having a wobbly. I have to just wait while it's.
On wobbles. Oh, okay.
Apologies for this. It won't be long.
Won't be long.
So,
okay. No, so let's remove that. Oh, there we go. Yes, that's the one I want. This is very interesting. It follows on what we were talking about the other week or so ago. Do you remember we spoke about, and I think it was actually last week, when we spoke about a Beis Din cannot hear from a translator. They have to be familiar. We said they were familiar with lots of languages so that they can hear directly from the witnesses. Now, very interesting Gemara here.
Thanks. Sorry, Norman, I had a disconnect here. We moved on to another place, have we?
I'm sorry.
I had internet disconnect. So,
oh, right, okay. Actually, it's not this one. I've sent you, I think, 3. Not they will come to this in a minute.
Are we now talking now?
You know, well, now hold on to that, Peter. Not the Psochim one. Oh, that's the one I want, Sanhedrin. Now, 1 minute. I'm just going into this point about had we been in the Beis Din. if we would have been in a Bezdin, we would have done something rather differently. The people we got here, Rab Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva. Now, very interesting Gemara. Go down, look at the fourth line. Gemara Sanhedrin. Omar Rab Yud Omar Rab. Kol ir she'ein bo shnayim ledaber ve'echod lishmoya. Now, this goes back to what we were talking about before. Look at Rashi, the first narrow line of Rashi. Shnaim ledaber means, first Rashi's on the other side. Yep. First narrow line. Shnaim ledaber, thank you. Two to speak. Shbeshivim loshen, in 70 languages, another very familiar with all the languages. The echod ishmaya, one of them can listen. Shehe Mavin, we spoke about this last week as well. He at least understands these 70 languages. But he can't reply. Back to the Gemara. That you really need two people who can speak and converse in all those 70 languages, minimum. You really don't want to have a Bezdin in a place like that where you haven't got some people who are familiar with all these languages. In fact, there were three in Beitar. There were three people who filled that role of understanding 70 languages. Now, the next line, which is important, Ubi Yavne, in the Bezdin in Yavne, Arbo, there were four individuals, amazing, familiar not just in their wisdom, but also these languages. And he mentions who they are. Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Akiva, Shimon HaTemoni, Don Lifneim Bekaka. Okay, that's a different thing. So in Beitar Yeshua, Yavna Abo, Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Akiva, Shimon Temoni would dawn in front of them. Although, as Rashi points out, Shimon HaTemoni was a Talmud, he's the fourth man who also was familiar with all these languages. Now, why am I showing you this Gemara? Not just because of the languages, but you can see as part of the in Yavne, Rabbi Akiva was one of the Dayanim. And therefore, thank you, Peter. Going back to our Gemara, how can the Mishnah say, had I been in the Bezdin, I would never have? What do you mean, had I been? He was in the Bezdin. So you should say, when I was in the Bezdin, have a look at, now we perhaps will understand the Rashi. Third line down in Rashi. Ilu hoyinu. V'yomim shesanhedrin donu dinei nefashos. There's another Gemara that the Bezdin stopped judging capital offences, or certainly not, they might have judged it, but they wouldn't carry out the death penalty 40 years prior to the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. So although there were Dayanim, and this obviously, now we understand what we're talking about, Rabbi Akiva, he was part of the Bezdin, yes, but in his time already, they had stopped judging capital offences and certainly carrying out the death penalty. So back now to our Rashi. Yes, Rabbi Akiva was part of the Bezdin, but they weren't at that time judging and carrying out a death penalty. He's saying, if I was there all those years earlier, lo nerag bo odom, no one would have been killed. Could the Mefarish, Gemara, Shebod Kuesaid, they would have checked and examined and asked them so many questions with until there would have been either a contradiction or indeed they wouldn't know the answer, and therefore he would not have carried out. But of course, in his time, as we just learned, yes, thank you, Peter. He was in the Bezdin, but the Bezdin at that time, that was later, that was after they'd stopped judging capital offenses. So what we're saying here is, had he been part of the Bezdin, then he would always have managed with his clever interrogation to trip up the Adim or whatever, or ask some questions which they had difficulty answering. And then we get somebody has joined us, and then we get the final view, which was Rab Shimon Gamliel, Af Hein Marbim. What does Af mean? Also, Afilu, even. So what's this? What does it mean? Even. Af Hein Marbim Shofchim Domim Yisrael. Even they are. What do you mean? Even they are. Af Hein. Rashi says, Im hoyu oisim kain, if they would do this. So interesting, this word af, if they would have behaved. So this is now the reply of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel to Rabbi Akiva, and saying, if you're behaving like that and never ever carrying out the death penalty, Im hoyu oisim kain, says Rashi, hoyu marbim shofchi domim, you would increase the amount of blood which will be spilt. Shelo yira'u mi bezdin. Nobody's going to be scared of the bezdin. You've got to not just have it on the statute books. There must be occasions where sadly you'd have to carry it out, in which case it should be carried out. Now the problem here is this wording of af. Af normally means, and this is another hand up from Mervyn.
Yeah, I just want to ask, still, all right, so Rabbi Akiva wasn't there at the time when they carried out, but that implies there was periods where the Sanhedrin did carry out death
Oh
penalty.
yes, they indeed.
I mean,
Prior to those, like it's only the last 40 years before the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash.
And why did it stop then when Rabbi Akiva?
Oh, because sadly, there were even more murders taking place, and they didn't want to carry out their death penalty that often. So you're right. Normally, you'd expect they'd keep on people being committed and carrying out the death penalty. Things sadly, I wouldn't say got out of control, but because it would have had to happen so often. They stopped actually giving the deth penalty. So that's
the fact that there were less people that knew 70 languages or whatever. That wasn't.
Oh no. That I only mentioned that to show that Rabbi Akiva was part of the Bezdin.
Yeah.
So if he's part of the Bezdin, how can they just say, had I been on the Bezdin? He was on the Bezdin. Yeah. I mean, if he wants to say anything, he should be saying, in my time, we did, we don't. But don't say, had I been in the Bezdin. And that's exactly why Rashi says, Bayomim shesanredin donudin enefoshes. Because in his time already, they had stopped judging that. And therefore, he can say, had I been at a time years ago where they judge capital offenses, this is the way I would have behaved. I would have always found ways to save that the person who was being judged.
There was a decision, so they must have made a decision not to carry out death penalties anymore. There must have been the Sanhedrin must have said, "There's too many."
Oh yeah, but prior to the time Rabbi Akiva, that's what I'm saying. Prior to the time Rabbi Akiva was sitting on the Bezdin. That's all.
I'm just saying about the first, leaving aside Rabbi Akiva, there must have come some judicial. They stopped. Stopped hanging. Just like they're doing.
Yeah, not hanging. I mean, there were death penalties. They could be carried out and were carried out. It seems absolutely.
We don't know how they did it.
No, I mean they're way there. There are lots of as we say. There's skilus reifa herring bechenik ways to carry out death. More of that. Well, that's actually Gemara and Sanhedrin. And parokim at each of those. But we've got this af hein ahoy. We've got a similar word in af. Af means normally eat also. It's like an also ran. Also, but it's strange wording here. also, they would also increase. Also, this also. I just wanted because this afhein, those two words do appear in a famous line. Peter, if I can call upon you, those two Gemaras in Psochim.
About afhen,
Absolutely. So well done, spot on. And that's exactly what I want to turn to, because you see there are two ways to translate that. Worth remembering, actually, because it does come up quite a bit. Peter, there are two Gemaras of Psochim. Let's have a look at the first one.
It's just
that's the Sanhedrin. Yeah.
It's gone slow. You just have to bear with me for a second until it connects. Apologies for this, everybody.
That's fine. We can talk amongst ourselves, as they say. There we go. Yes. Right, it's the last line of that. Kuf Ches Omid Aleph. This Gemara comes up in several places. I'm into Avi Psochim now. Why not? We did that some while back. People may remember. Beautiful Perek. If you can scroll down for us. There's a famous statement that been mentioned. Michael, others mentioned, I think. Omar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Noshim chayoves ba'arba kosos. Ladies are also obliged in the mitzvah of the Dalet kosos. Now, remember the rule. I know this is a little bit not really connected to Makkas, but we'll get there in a moment. Normally, mitzvahs aseh shazman garoma. We've spoken about that principle before. Positive mitzvahs which are time bound, ladies are exempt, but not the mitzvah of Dalet Kosa. Dalet Kosa, of course, is you can have 4 cups of wine whenever you like. But the mitzvah of Dalet Kosa says on Pesach. There is a mitzvah for it. That mitzvah they are included in the mitzvah of Arba Kosis. Why? We find the same thing with Megillah. You got it, actually Chanukah too. But now you turn to the next page or the next Omud. Noshim Chayovis Ba'arba Kosis Halolu. No, that's back to Sanhedrin. Sorry. That's it. Thank you, Peter. She'af, there's the words. She'af hein hoyu ba'uso hanes. They were also in the miracle. Now, what's this afhein? Also them? Now, look at the little aleph next to af. That takes me to the left-hand side, where there's another, right at the top, you've got the aleph. It tells me other sources, which you mentioned. Gemara in Shabbos talking about Chanukah. Gemara in Megillah talking about Megillah Esther. It comes up in Erechim too. Let's go back to this Gemara. Afhein hoya ba'os hanes. Because they were. Now, how would you translate that? Afhein hoya ba'os hanes. Now, we're going to see, look at Rashi, the top line. Sha'afhein hoya ba'os hanes. Kuda omrinon bischan noshim tzidkonios. Because the merit of the ladies, the righteous ladies, Sheba'os Hadon Nigalu, they ensured that the men kept on the straight and narrow. V'chein gabi mikra Megillah, or minan hochi, mishum da al yedei Esther Nigalu. V'chein gabi Chanukah Masechet Shabbos. So it's very interesting. They're translating, therefore, af. Look, drop down to the Rashbam, Rashi's grandson. First line. Af hein, a bit higher. That's it. Rashbam. Af on the left-hand side. Shaf hein hoye bois hanes. The Omer Masechet Soda bischar noshim tzidkonis, and the merit of those righteous ladies. Shoy bois hador nigalu. That's why the redemption happened. V'chein gami mikra Megillah. Of course, we know that. It was, of course, major Esther, major personality in the Megillah. Mishum al yedei Esther, through Esther. Havi. Chanukah. So, interesting, this word af, how would you translate the word af then? Definitely. That's what you're saying. If the mitzvah of Dalet Kosas or Megillas Esther, it is also applicable to ladies because they were certainly in this nace because they were absolutely crucial in it. So you can see from Rashi and the Rashbam that he's translating up as certainly. But look at Tosfos on the top. If you scroll, yes, second Tosfos down, third wide line. Hoya both, and it's Pirish Rashbam and Rashi too. Could be that the people didn't have the Rashi on Psochim. That's why it's split. He mentions Rashbam. Sha'al Yodom, through them, Nigalu, V'chein Megillat Esther, V'chanike Alidei Yehudis. In other words, the ladies were absolutely crucial in Yetzias Mitzrayim. Their merit also with Esther and also in Hanukkah, and therefore they certainly should be part of the mitzvah of lighting candles. They don't have to light necessarily themselves. Maybe the husbands will be lighting on their behalf, but they've got to be part of that mitzvah, and certainly the Dalet Kosas. Now, this is what I want to show you. The Kosha, says Tosfos, Da'af mashma she'enon ikka. Af, the word af, mashma. I'm not for sure mashma sounds more like, possibly that's a mashma sound from the word shema. It sounds like also. Af einon ikka, they're not the main. They're also involved in that mitzvah. The oider Yishalmi, Goris Afin Hoy Ba'isa Sophic. They were also involved in the Sophic, which means, particularly talking about, let's say, Hanukkah or Purim, where there was that death threat coming from Haman. They were also, so in other words, it's not the cause of the miracle allowing them to be saved, whether it's Megillas or Hanukkah. Mashma, but also sakona, they were involved in that sakona, the danger, the lahashmid al-hareg al-abed. Okay, so you can see Tosfos is saying the word af means also. To Rashi is saying certainly, af hein, certainly they should be doing this mitzvah because they were crucial in the mitzvah of either Yetzias Mitzrayim, leaving Mitzrayim, redemption from Mitzrayim, or those other occasions, Hanukkah and Purim. Now continue Tosfos.
Yeah.
Says Tosfos,
that abbreviation, it's always, I've always wondered the abbreviation coming up, Afal Gav.
Yeah, even though.
Again, it's the word af, and sometimes we say Afal P.
Yes.
Literally means nose on the back or nose on the mouth.
Yes, it does. Afal Gav
How
means
is that? I don't understand it.
I'm sorry? You never understood that?
Yeah, what's it got to do with noses and mouths and backs?
No. In other words, it's like the alpha. Even in English, you would say, even though you don't really, they're like secondary to.
But
just like
it means off means a nose, no? And P is definitely
Gav. A nose on a back, which is not the main way people would be looking, or actually a body afal gav, which means
afal p. I don't understand that.
Even that is afal p. Even though I don't know how you put those two together.
You don't have to nose, because there's plenty of times in Hebrew where you have two words which have similar spellings.
But P and Gav are definitely body parts. You can't argue that.
No, Afal P.
It could be evil. Afilu is evil. Just like the word afilu.
Yeah, but Afal Gav, Afal P.
Afal P. It is interesting.
Where does that come from, afilu? There's obviously a word which has the
afilu. Yeah, that means even.
Well, it's like tongue in cheek.
Yeah, a bit like that.
Or
yes,
nose on mouth.
Nose. You ever say nose on? Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, what he's saying though is, according to Rashi, they are the crucial in the mitzvah. Tosfos is saying no. It's all they're also included. You know, it's af does not mean they certainly. It means also. Men were involved, of course, in this sakona, this danger. So were the ladies. Yeah, but it doesn't mean they're necessarily the most prominent part. As you say, according to Rashi and the Rashbam, they've certainly involved in the mitzvah. They should be, because they were the crucial in the deliverance. So all I'm saying is, you can see there are two ways to translate this word afhain. I know you've got the afalpi and Benjamin's point here, but it's just this word af here. Af can either mean also
crucial. Just Tosfos think they were
or crucial. So Rashi and the Rashbam is saying they're crucial. It's, in other words, certainly crucial, certainly. So you could learn, going back to our Gemara. I know perhaps later in this point, back to our Mishnah. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, they certainly are causing. Not only you've got these murderers, but they themselves are certainly causing extra murder. Why? Because according to those two, Tanoim, Rab Taf and Rabbi Akiva, it was very unlikely that the death penalty would be carried out, if at all. And according to the view of Rab Taf and Rabbi Akiva, it wasn't going to be carried out. So you could learn here. All I'm saying is, based on Rashi and Rashbam over there in the same Gemara comes up in Megillah as it does in Psochim, you could say the same thing here. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, they certainly are not crucial, in as much as they certainly are increasing, because otherwise the problems say they're also, what's the af also? Afhain Marabim Shofir. But anyway, whichever way you like, I thought it was an opportunity to mention the Afhain, because those two words come up and people are familiar with Afhain, Hoya, Bois, and Ace. So you've got two ways of interpreting that. There's more to that coming at the end of this piece of Gemara, not for tonight. But as we've seen the Mishnah, let's stop there on this point and move on to the Gemara. Now, yeah, there is more to discuss all about that, but I say the Gemara will pick it up. But I just wanted to get across this. I think they certainly, maybe that's Pshat according to Rashi and the Rashbam, they certainly are causing extra deaths because there's no fear of the Beis Din. That's really what Rabbi Shimon Gamliel is saying. Okay, back to our Gemara on the first part of the Mishnah. The first part of the Mishnah spoke about looking at again the case, retrying someone. And what did the Mishnah say at the beginning? If you come back after this chap's run off, he's brought back to the same Beis Din. Lifnei oso Beis Din. Notice the Mishnah said he's brought in front of the same Beis Din. They don't retry him. Why did the Mishnah add those words? Misha nigma dina uborach. It could have just said ubo lifnei Beis Din. The Mishnah doesn't say that. Ubo lifnei oso Beis Din. He's brought back to the same Beis Din where he was tried initially. Then you don't retry him. The inference from there, says the Gemara, lifnei osa Beis Din hu de'ein soisrin. You don't break, if you like, soiser, listor, to change, break, retry. Sounds like holifnei Beis Din acher. Had it been a different Beis Din he was taken to, then you do retry him. For Tony Sefer, the Sefer says, that's the second part of the Mishnah, Kol Mokom, every place, Sheyamdu Shnayim v'yomru mi'idin onu eshis Poloni, Shenigma dino bebezdin Ploni, Wherever two witnesses come forward and they say Ploni or Ploni, aid him are the following, we can name them, we've got all that. Hari Zenerag, obviously this is just one line in the Gemara here. Obviously the Bezdin in that new city would look into this. But there the Gemara says, or the Mishnah says, that he doesn't need to be retried. So again, what's the problem? The first part of the Mishnah says it's only because he is brought back to the same Bezdin, he's not retried. Had it been a different Bezdin, you'd start all over again. And the second part of the Mishnah said, no, if he's brought back to a different Bezdin or any Bezdin, as long as you have two witnesses saying that we were there and we saw the verdict, then you're not going to retry him. You're not going to go through the labor of the witnesses, etc. Omer Abaya lo kashya. The first part and the second part of the Mishnah are talking about different cases. Kan be'eretz Yisrael, kan b'chutz la'oretz. One of the occasions is if it's been moved from Be'eretz Yisrael, kam b'chutzlo, it's in chutzlo, it's or in Eretz Yisrael. Let's see which one of those fits with the first part and which one the second part. Desanya, we've got a Mishnah. A Brisa, I'm sorry, Desanya. Comes at Tosefta actually. Rabbi Yehuda ben Dustoi Omer. Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Shetach. There you are, Rabbi Shimon ben Shetach. Quote, Borach me eretz, l'chutz la'oretz. Someone who ran, escaped from Eretz Yisrael, me oretz, from Eretz Yisrael to chutz la'oretz, ein soisrin es dinai. You do not revisit the case. But michutz la'oretz, if someone has escaped from chutz la'oretz to Eretz Yisrael, even if there were, it sounds like, witnesses that said, we saw what happened, heard what happened, we heard the verdict. Soisrin estino, you do start again if you're going to Eretz Yisrael, a Bezdin in Eretz Yisrael, because, very interesting, mipnei zechusa shel Eretz Yisrael. Wow, what's this zechusa shel Eretz Yisrael? Look at Rashi. Mipnei zechusa shel Eretz Yisrael, ulai toya limtzo lo pesach shel zechus. The fact that in Eretz Yisrael, maybe the dayonim there, with the zechus of coming to Eretz Yisrael, the great merit, they'll find some hole in the arguments that were placed and they'll manage to acquit him. That's what we're saying. So there's a difference there. If he was going to chutz la'oretz, once you've got a decision, the decision's made, the verdict was there in Eretz Yisrael, coming to chutz la'oretz, we stick with, as long as you've got the witnesses who say that they were there at the verdict, we will stick with it. Coming to Eretz Yisrael was saying, we are going to revisit, although there was a decision in chutz la'oretz, we're saying in Eretz Yisrael, there seems to be a possibility, there could be a zechus, the fact that he himself is now in Eretz Yisrael, that itself is a merit. Maybe they'll find a way of deciding that, in fact, they won't have to carry out that death penalty. I think Malcolm had his hand up there, finger.
Yeah, it's actually just, sorry to ask a silly question, but where's the Rashi?
Go for it.
Where is the Rashi located that you just read out?
Oh, sorry, it's the 1 to 3rd narrow line down. Have you got it? The third narrow line in Rashi. On Daf Zayin or Aleph.
No, I can't see it. Oh.
Third wide line? Oh, it is in mine.
Oh, third wide.
Sorry, third narrow line.
Third narrow line. But
the first, the beginning of the line in mine says Gemara. Have you got a different setting?
It says Gemara.
I'm looking
Gemara.
at the page, Taf Zayin Amud Aleph,
Yeah.
and I'm looking at the third narrow line.
But the
line begins.
Oh, I see. Okay,
yeah,
sorry, I'm in the wrong place. Okay, got it.
Next line. Ulai toel limtzo lo pesach shel zechus. Maybe the fact that he's come to Eretz Yisrael himself. Maybe that will be a merit, will stand him in good stead. And yes, he at least he won't get the death penalty. Maybe they'll say he has to go to Golus, go to exile. But the death penalty maybe will not be carried out again, and therefore we are going to revisit this, Michael.
Yes, just a couple of things on Rabbi Shimon ben Shetach. In
yes,
he's not referred to as Rabbi; he's simply referred to as Shimon ben Shetach, not Rabbi. I mean, not a major thing, but besides, Yehillel or Shammai, it's generally one or the other, is it not? I would have thought. I mean, just an observation.
There's good point, Shimon ben Shetach. Yeah,
because
normally you do find one or the other. It's true. There may be differences with the text. When I say text, I mean the actual Girsa of the Gemara Shimon ben Shetach, where it should be Reb Shimon ben Shetach. Here we've got, as you've quite rightly said, Rebbe Shimon ben Shetach. People could. You're right. Normally it is one or the either they're called Rebbe always. Sometimes you do have. I'm trying to think of some other examples of that where the Reb's missing. Reb Shimon ben Shetach.
A copy of the Mahalo is Eric.
Yeah, no, but Michael's looking at one where there's a change. Yes, you've got Rabbonim, great Rabbonim, Tanoim, who are not called Rebbe. And you might, you've got Hillel Azokein.
Yeah.
So Michael's point is that you find with Shimon Shetach, he's sometimes called Rebbe and sometimes not. You'd have to think, that Gemara you mentioned before, was that with Rebbe? And I mean, there could be at different times of his career that he might have made various statements. Shimon ben Shetach Omar.
Yeah, because I referred to him just before when I referred to him as Shimon ben Shetach.
No, there's a good one. The one, the pickup on that may be something he'd been saying already as a younger person, and that's when he started saying it. It's probably worth seeing the other examples where you mentioned about where he did carry out death penalty. Is he called there Shimon ben Shetach or Rab Shimon ben Shetach? That's an interesting one.
And interesting, that case in the Mishnah talks about being careful to investigate Adim.
Oh yes,
it's so he was quite into the court process.
Oh yeah. That's Shimon ben Shetach. Interesting here. You got Borach Mishum Rabbi Shimon Borach michutz la'aretz. He's the one who says because of Zechus shel Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah.
So fascinating. So what we're saying there is because of the Zechus of Eretz Yisrael that it warrants the fact that it's true, he has legged it and left the Bezdin, but nevertheless he's come to Eretz Yisrael, and maybe the Dayan in there will be able to find some way. And we do try, as we've mentioned this possibly before, the Itzilo Ho'eda, which means we try desperately hard not to carry out that death penalty. Of course, as we've seen here in the Gemara, sometimes it is necessary, and if so, then it should be carried out. But we try hard not to. There'll be other things that we can use, but not the death penalty. That's, I think, what we're saying. So back now to our Gemara, and we've got this point about...
Can I just ask a quick question? Sorry. I mean, it's quite an interesting thing, this thing about this, but I mean, I was just wondering, the act of going to Israel is a sort of a mitzvah, isn't it? I mean, it's sort of he's going because, so in a way, he's been, although he's tarred, he's tainted, but on the other hand, he's sort of trying to. Is there some recognition that he's sort of that there's something
Yeah.
positive
Oh,
on his,
yeah, it's
you know.
yeah, more that that chus maybe will enable the Dayonim there in Eretz Yisrael to find. But you're right, yeah, it is a chus in Eretz Yisrael. The chus that he's going to Eretz Yisrael. I mean, or he's trying. Of course, he has run away from Bezdin, so we mustn't forget that. But nevertheless, the fact that he's gone to Eretz Yisrael, that itself is a chus, and then maybe the opportunity there to be able to change his ways. And therefore, what we're saying is that you're quite right. Maybe there will be a way that we can avoid carrying out that death penalty. Yeah, a good point that the Zchus of Eretz Yisrael, indeed. I mean, it was throughout the ages. It was never an easy thing. I mean, Eretz Yisrael is nikne b'yisurim. It was generally, it had been very difficult times to living in Eretz Yisrael, financially and just making ends meet. And so it was some, just to go to Eretz Yisrael was tough getting there. But the zchus of being in Eretz Yisrael, nevertheless, maybe the uplift he would get from Eretz Yisrael would be enough to allow these dayonim. Maybe that would stand in his it's a positive for him. Let's just have a quick look at the next couple of lines if we can. Sanhedrin noheges. Do you remember this was a statement here the Gemara says about in Eretz Yisrael and in Chutz La'aretz. So we do have courts that can judge. We're talking about capital offences, but generally a Bezdin, not just in Eretz Yisrael, Chutz La'aretz too. And the Gemara asks, Mino Hani Mili. We're familiar with those words, often manham, Mino Hani Mili. From where? And generally, if you've got Mino Hani Mili, it means we will be looking for a posuk in the Torah or Tanakh. Where do we know that? Maybe Eretz Yisrael is a place for courts and nowhere else. Says the Gemara, the Tonu Rabbanon. Tosefta, we've got the Tonu Rabbanon. Now we'll need a couple of psukim here. First of all, we'll look at Bamidbar Lamed Hey Choftes, please, Peter. So it's Numbers 35:29, please.
Norman, it's a very interesting concept that different countries can also be facts of a case, isn't it? Or the
Factors, sorry?
It's a very interesting concept that different countries, being in different countries, can alter the judgment of a court case. I mean, presumably they're judging it on the facts of the case, aren't they? That would be the norm. And the facts haven't changed. He either killed this other guy or he...
Yeah, absolutely. But we're talking about perhaps the quality of the dayonim would allow them to look into this further. Yeah, so you're right.
And what? Different, or the extenuating circumstances, or what was being said?
Something they may be able to find. If they can come up with something which would, some argument which would say that he really shouldn't be killed. You're right, they'd have to come up with something which would obviously stand up. It can't just be any old argument. But yeah, you're right. You're saying the dayonim in Eretz Yisrael, maybe they can find a way not to have to carry out that death penalty. Yeah, and I suppose that was an as we see here. It's an accepted principle. They're going to Eretz Yisrael, and the dayonim there in Eretz Yisrael. And as we know before, we've seen that coming towards Eretz Yisrael in Yerushalayim was where the cream of the dayonim were in Eretz Yisrael. There may be a way that we wouldn't actually have to carry out the death penalty. Yeah. But yeah, it is an interesting principle. Let's have a look here at this pasuk, Bamidbar 35:29. So a bit of it may be better to go to. Yeah, okay, let's go for it again. Tanakh 35:29 are very good. This is talking about the death penalty. 30, keep kol maki nefesh. 30, keep going. Oh, no, 29. Sorry, gone too far. Yes. This should be the rules. Lechukas. Lechukas mishpat. Statute of judgment. Ludoroseichem. B'chol moshvoseichem. So this is a whole parsha dealing with death, whether it's b'mezid or b'shogeg, accidentally or intentional. But the posuk says b'chol moshvoseichem. In all the places, he says settlements, from shav loshuv or leishav, to dwell in all your dwelling places, maybe b'chol moshvoseichem, wherever you're living. Thank you. We will need another posuk in a minute, and I'll tell you what it is. We'll go to Deuteronomy 16:18 in a moment, but if we can go back to seeing each other. So back to the Gemara. Interesting. Our Gemara doesn't mention the crucial last couple of words. I've got a note on the side saying it's the next two words which are crucial, so it's almost like a bechulu. You do find that in the Gemara, where sometimes the Gemara just mentions of the initial words of a posuk, expecting you to complete it yourself. Once you know which posuk it is, and I've got a note around the side. We got to look at those last couple of words, which say b'chol moshvoseichem. In all your settlements, all places where you're living. Lo madnu the Sanhedrin shenoheges ba'oretz u'b'chutz la'oretz. Fair enough. Says the Gemara im kain ma Talmud loima bishorecha, in your gates. Now that's talking about Eretz Yisrael. If we can turn to Devarim 16:18, last one of the night. Peter 16:18. Here it is. Well, that was good. 16. There it is. Actually, it's 18. Shoftim b'shotrim. Don't know anybody's bar mitzvah. Shoftim b'shotrim. Magistrates, shoftim, judges. Shotrim, he says, officials. We are shoftim. Titele b'chol she'orecha. In all your gates. Now, I know wherever you're residing, you wouldn't really use the word b'chol she'orecha unless you were talking about in Eretz Yisrael. So you should appoint, he said, for all b'chol she'orecha, which Hashem, you can see from the rest of the posuk, which Hashem gives you for your. Here we've got your different tribes. So we're talking about Eretz Yisrael here, and here it says b'chol she'orecha, but it doesn't go any further than that. It talks about judges, officials, if you like, but you've certainly got shoftim there, the magistrates and judges. But there the posuk says b'chol she'orecha, etc. But does not mention wherever you're living, but in places where, which was given to you part of Eretz Yisrael. So yes, you've got the words. He's got here settlements, but or your gates, cities, but places you've been given as of your tribes. I mean, Eretz Yisrael. Thank you, Peter. Back to our Gemara. So we've got one pasuk which tells us b'chol moshvoseichem. We've got, it says the Gemara, im kemal Talmud loima bishorecha. Got that? And if you notice around the side, I've got a little aleph, which tells me to look at the change, the Hagor of the Vilna Gaon. He said it should be b'chol she'orecha, and that's the pasuk we saw in Shoftim. So again, talking about judges, said b'chol bishwel, actually b'chol she'orecha. That's the main word. You can see Rashi quotes that as well. Shoftim b'chol she'orecha. Although you got, what do you do with the word? It's really looking at that word she'orecha, your gates, and the rest of the pasuk tells me that's talking about Eretz Yisrael. So there seems to be a contradiction here. One posuk telling us that you can have judges anywhere, wherever you're living, and one seems to be limited to Eretz Yisrael. This is the answer. Yes. Any particular area, like a plach, it's not quite, it's like a semi-kingdom, a plach, and b'chol ir v'ir. B'chol she'orecho means a city. That's what we're saying there. And that's in addition to having the general courts. But b'chutz la'aretz, the posuk we said b'chol moshvoi seichem, wherever you're living, but we won't be as detailed and as many as you'd have in Eretz Yisrael. That's the difference. Ato Moshe b'chol plach, v'iato Moshe b'chol ir v'ir. Have a look at Rashi. Rashi just tells us Ato Moshe, Ato chayiv lahoshe b'chol plach u'plach. Plach means a parachim, means a dominion, an area. As you'd have. So, in other words, in Eretz Yisrael, as in here, this again goes back to what we said before. You've got courts, but then you have some senior courts over that whole jurisdiction, over the whole plach, the whole area. So that's what you've got. Not just as there you've had in the previous wherever you're living, there would be one court for the whole area. Here in Eretz Yisrael, you've got smaller courts, b'chol she'orecha, your gates. Gates here in the way, meaning like cities, smaller cities, but not in the like, I suppose you'd say they're different between cities and counties. In Chutz La'aretz, it would be one per county, whereas in Eretz Yisrael, you'd have more courts, and therefore that's another reason why coming to Eretz Yisrael, you've got these more courts, more dayanim, more people trained in this area. And that's what we're saying, b'chol shorecha. So there's a slight difference there between Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz, where in Eretz Yisrael, you'd have more training going on, more different dayanim, and a bit of a hierarchy there until you get to the county court, where in Chutz La'aretz you wouldn't have it to such a detail. So I'd say another reason why Eretz Yisrael would be on a higher level. With that, gentlemen?
I mean, presumably there were more courts. Sorry.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, go on.
And more people.
Yes, more people to judge. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I didn't quite catch
that.
Yes.
There were more people to try. That was why.
Yeah, absolutely.
No?
Yeah. So
because in Eretz Yisrael, there were people to try. I mean, if the population diluted in Chutz La'aretz, or based in the needs of the best. Yeah, because you have the other courts, the non-Jewish.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also this idea of, the main judgment coming from Eretz Yisrael, moving to Eretz Yisrael, you'd have the more judges there. Yeah, you'd need more. And therefore, again, the trials in Eretz Yisrael, moving towards, we always speak to going to Yerushalayim, and Kimitzi and Teitei Sorah, hopefully. So therefore, there will be more people to try, but therefore more discussions between the dayanim, which would be very helpful. Okay, with that,
Norman, there's an interesting note in the art scroll that says that if a retrial happens outside in Chutz La'aretz, having been tried in Eretz Yisrael, you can't reconvict, or because the merit of living in Israel is counted in the defendant's favor.
Yes.
So he's going to have a lesser case outside. Which is really interesting, that even in capital cases, the very merit of living in Israel was counted in the defendant's favor, which is extraordinary, really.
Well, yeah, but what does that mean? I mean, you're not going to overturn a judgment because of that. No, what we're saying is that merit may allow, then it sounds like, in his favor, as Rashi said here, that merit will help towards finding a solution which would not mean that he needs to be killed.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. That the merit of living in Eretz Yisrael, indeed. And I think, as somebody mentioned before, the fact he's coming to Eretz Yisrael means that he himself may be looking for a change in his ways, coming to Eretz Yisrael, and say being the uplift he'll have from going there, living there. That's chus itself. Good point. Very good.
Actually, this guy's coming from Quarters. He's been convicted of murder. He's in Golos. I know he's coming on his own by train, or he's driving a car. I mean,
he's taken to, or maybe he's gone off to. He's gone to Eretz Yisrael. He's found in Eretz Yisrael, and therefore they capture him, take him back to a court. This time in Eretz Yisrael, they will retry him in Eretz Yisrael. That's what we're saying. Going from Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Yisrael, and we're saying with the extra. Although, I mean, obviously they're not going to overturn something which is absolute. If it's absolutely correct, then they will carry it out. Of course they will. But they will an opportunity. The fact he's gone to Eretz Yisrael, the opportunity to reconsider. And see if there's a way, because we don't. Maybe the Dayanim there will find a way of not having to carry out the death penalty. We don't want to have to carry that out. That's what we're saying.
That was just the logistics of a convicted person. It's happening.
Well, no, he's right. He's run off. He's run off, gone off to Eretz Yisrael. Not impossible. Then he's found there. He's been captured, and how they get the people out to bring him to Beis Din. You're right. You'd have to find the people to do that.
Okay, I get it. All right.
Okay.
Wait, Norman. If he ran to Eretz Yisrael, right?
Yes.
And when he got there, his luck was that two of the people that were at the original trial in Chutz La'aretz happened to be on holiday in Israel as well, and they spot him first before he gets to the other Beit Din in Israel.
No.
What happens then? Sorry,
no. You're quite right. It won't help.
Because they're the two people that they were at the original trial, so they testify that he was convicted.
He was convicted. The Beis Din, the Beis Din in Eretz Yisrael will still say thank you very much for all that. Of course, they'll go through it all, but they will deliberate themselves.
No, but he hasn't yet got to a Beit Din in Israel.
No. So what happened? They will call in the whoever it is. He's taken to the courts. Obviously, they have to ensure this was the right fellow. He will be taken to the courts, and the courts. Okay.
So there's definitely
will go over the case again, and they'll say, "Just 1 minute. I think there's a hole here, which means that maybe he innocent, maybe not, but not sufficient to be able to carry out the death penalty." They will take, taking other things into account. Maybe they look at it from a slightly different angle, and then I mean, it may have to go off to.
Is it about jurisdiction? Is it also about jurisdiction? In other words, he's out of the Beit Din. He's not in the jurisdiction of the original Beit Din.
That's right. He's moved away from there, so they will have to deliberate. They will have to deliberate on it and come to their own conclusion. I'm sure they will look at all the whatever there is written written or whatever. They may call upon other agents to come forward and say more about the case that happened there. So with that, gentlemen, moved on a bit of time. Wish you well. Are we okay for next week? All being well? Yep. Okay. Good. Right. So let's close on that. Just say, let me just get a 10. Oh, that was quick. Sure. Finger on the buzzer. Shiur Lamalois.
May your bow as Adonai, Al Yifeilum, Al Yifeilum, Hinei lo yanu yishon shomei
Yisrael.
Adonai Shomrecho Adonai Gaji Mene Yom Hashemesh Lo Yakeko Yoreach Malo Adonai Yishmerecho Mikol Yishmo Hashem Adonai Yishmor Ve'Zeh U'Towecho Me'ato B'Yad
Achenen kol beis Yisrael han nesulim batzolom shivyo hoim nemeim ba'yom aveim ba'yavosh b'chim v'yotzei mitzora lirvacho mi'afele oilo mishibu ligula hashlo ba'agolo bisman koriv v'noma amen. And Hashem, I do hope that next week we can drink a l'chaim together as we approaching the end of the perek, which is quite something actually, a tough perek. So please bring with whatever you prefer. And hopefully